Okay, we're good? All right. Good evening, everyone. I'll call this regularly scheduled meeting of Bridgewater Town Council to order, and as always, we'll recognize that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the unceded and ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people, and it is our privilege to be here. One addition to the agenda, which is land acquisition for public street purposes on Maple Street, so that will be in addition to your agenda. And with that, can I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Councillor Newell, thank you. Seconded by Deputy Mayor McDonald. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. A few proclamations. May, which I can't believe May starts on Friday. May is Lyme Awareness Month, and as we know here in Lunenburg County, we are essentially the epicenter for Lyme disease globally, I believe, which is not something we want to be recognized for. So we have to be cautious all year, especially now. Climate change has changed that quite a bit, but May is Lyme Awareness Month, and there's lots of information that'll be coming out over the course of the month from the province, especially on that. May is also, I'm going to try to not mess up the pronunciation, sorry, Guillain-Barré syndrome and chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy Awareness Month, so GBS and CIPD Awareness Month. So GBS syndrome is a rare neurological disorder in which the body's own immune system attacks the nerves. And CIPD is a rare inflammatory disorder of the nerves characterized by gradually increasing sensory symptoms, weakness, and loss of reflexes. So those are both, May is Awareness Month for both of those, and tomorrow is National Day of Mourning for those killed in the workplace. And so you'll see many flags at half-mast around the communities, especially in Nova Scotia. Are there any announcements from members of Council? Councillor Fisher?
Yes, I'd just like to remind the public that the Chamber has an event Thursday, April 30th from 8 till 9:30 a.m. at the Bridgewater Social Club upstairs. It's for existing members, new members, or members that wish to find out what the Chamber is all about. So bring your questions and join us for a morning chat about the benefits of membership with the Bridgewater Area Chamber of Commerce. So everybody's welcome this Thursday upstairs at the Michelin Social Club.
Thank you. Other announcements? Last week we had a couple of events. The Chamber had its Breakfast with the Mayors event last Thursday morning, which was a great sold-out event up at Stonemont. I'd never been in that facility, but it was quite something, and I had the privilege and pleasure of speaking alongside my mayoral colleague, Mayor McLean-Weil, and it was great conversation, great questions, and look forward to that next year. Someone pitched mocktails with the mayors, but I said the risk is there someone shortens that to just mocking the mayors, which is happens more often than you think. And then last Thursday evening, we recognized a number of very special volunteers in our community at the Des Brisé Museum, which was a fantastic venue for that. So thank you to Deputy Mayor McDonald, who emceed that, and our staff. Some of them are here, who put that event together, and huge success. Lots of positive responses from people who really enjoyed that event. Any other announcements? If there's none, we are down to delegations. So this is the time, if there's any members of the public that wish to address council, now is your time. Everyone gets 2 minutes. That doesn't include any questions that council would have. But if you want to come down, then you can just introduce yourself and the community that you're from at the microphone down here at the podium. Morning.
My name's Megan McDonald. I live in Modal in District 2, but I'm here today on a regional matter. So I am here to speak today as a current member of the Anti-Racism, Anti-Discrimination Advisory Committee. Perhaps more strongly, though, I am here as a member of this community, and I wish to share my concern and disappointment at the discussion of dissolving that committee. And I appreciate that staff at Town of Bridgewater have suggested other options, and I hope that council will consider them. When I first saw that the committee was being struck for Lunenburg County, I was cautiously optimistic. The need for this work to be done in a deliberate and focused manner has been long overdue in Nova Scotia, and indeed Lunenburg County for decades. However, in today's particular climate of deep division, extreme views, and dangerous ideology, I believe now more than ever we need to be extremely clear about what is and what is not acceptable in our communities. We need to be extremely clear to all members of our communities, but especially those who are targeted by racism and hate, that we as a society are working to build inclusive spaces that are safe and inviting for everyone. The committee was struck in response to the mandated work handed down by the province to municipalities through the Dismantling Racism and Hate Act. The Act's focus is on a commitment to work with underrepresented and underserved communities to create a community network and develop data standards to monitor and address systemic hate, inequality, and racism. It is my understanding that all 5 municipal units in Lunenburg County are committed to this work. If this work is to be achieved with true impact, all councils will need to work in a collaborative way. As most councillors would attest, municipal governments are closest to the people. The day-to-day life of a citizen is deeply affected by the work and decisions made in local council chambers, and the work of council is impacted by the lived experience of their constituents. Community voices, that same lived experience, regular feedback, and accountability measures will be necessary to stay on track with this work in a meaningful way. To dissolve the ARDAC committee would be an unnecessary step backward in work that is already difficult, nuanced, and that will only build at the pace of trust. This work will not be straightforward. This work will not be comfortable. The reality is that working on anti-racism and anti-discrimination subjects will always be uncomfortable. If the work is not uncomfortable, you are likely not making progress. Discomfort means change. Discomfort means something is happening. Please do not turn away this group of people who are willing to do the hard work. The members of this committee are well aware that this work takes time, commitment, and resilience. Let's do this work, let's do it collaboratively, and let's do it together. Thank you.
I don't know if anyone, members of council, had questions. No, I think we're good. Did you wish to speak as well, sir? Yeah. And come on down and just introduce yourself and where you're from.
Sure. So my name is Caleb Wilden. I live in East LaHave, but I work here in town. I work with a pretty diverse group of people, some of whom have been on the receiving end of the hate and bigotry that I'm here to discuss. I am curious how many of the councillors and you mayor have had the N-word thrown at you as you walk down the street. Any of you? Seems unlikely. I don't know how many of you have had the F-word thrown at you as you try to celebrate gay pride. I guess, well, yeah, I know you have. So I think the biggest part of what we were trying to do on the committee is trying to address the hardest part of the bigotry and hate, and I will say white supremacy that exists here in our community, and I think is reflected, unfortunately, in a lot of the attitudes that we see. Now, the towns in our community are the hubs of a lot of the businesses and the grocery stores and the gym and a million other places that a lot of us need to use. But what also happens is that when folks are here in town, sometimes they're from the municipality, sometimes they live here in town, they're taking opportunities to make certain groups of people feel very unwelcome. Sometimes those groups are elders. Sometimes those groups are people labeled as having a disability. Sometimes those groups are Black Canadians, Black Nova Scotians. Sometimes they're from South Asia. Sometimes they're from here, but they appear to be from South Asia. All of those folks have been on the receiving end of hate and bigotry in this town, not just from a group of guys going by in a car. They have also been targeted by the police at times. They have also been, in some ways, targeted but for the right reasons and warned, hey, this isn't a safe place for you to walk around late at night, which is, I think, maybe a well-intentioned move, but a very negative one in my mind. When I joined the committee, my goal was very, very simple. I needed to be able to tell my brother and other members of my family that while we still have racism in our community, we have a plan and a group of committed people that are willing to take a stand against that racism, that bigotry, that discrimination in our community. Not that we can stop it all, but I think that we can reduce it. But I don't think we can do it by turning inward. I don't think we can do it with internal committees. I don't think we can do it with HR policies. HR policies are not going to stop the N-word from getting thrown at my friends as they walk through town. The only way to do that is to work collaboratively, as Megan said, as a community, a broader community, to tackle hate where it comes from, at every single level. In our schools, of course, certainly in the administration of our public facilities, certainly in the police departments and in the RCMP. We have, I think with this committee, the unique opportunity to integrate the voices of the people who are on the receiving end of bigotry and hate. By voting to dissolve the committee at Modal and at Chester, that was a clear communication to people of color and other people who are on the receiving end of discrimination. It's a clear communication regardless of intention, regardless of not wanting to be called names. It's a clear communication that the municipality doesn't have the appetite to take on hate where it lives. At Chester as well, and I think the town now has an opportunity to add their voice to the mix. Now, Mahone Bay, as you may know, voted to continue on with the committee. They voted as, I think, and unanimously from what I saw. And what I took from that was a commitment to do the work. And I think voting to dissolve the committee or to limit participation in it, I think is a real disservice. And I have a lot more, but I will leave you with this. 6 years ago in this town, myself and many other people, I would argue thousands, gathered on this street down below us here. And we spoke out, I think very appropriately, against police corruption, against white supremacy, against and for police accountability, and against racism. That protest was led by a community leader that I saw as a model, somebody that I could follow, somebody that I could aspire to be like. And it was that moment that I thought to myself, okay, we're getting somewhere. I had never seen that many people gathered against racism and against hate. I grew up here, not on the South Shore, and I would like to see that spirit grab this council today for us to vote, for you guys to vote against the stuff that is, I think, really debilitating our community, limiting our economic progress, and making it an unsafe and unwelcome community for many people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have you any
I
questions?
don't know if anyone has any questions. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Caleb. So this item is coming up later in our agenda this evening. We have the minutes from the April 13th regular council meeting. Any errors or omissions with those? Hearing none, motion to approve the minutes is circulated. Councillor Newell, seconded by Councillor Frazier. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. And we are down to Business Rising Unfinished Business North Parkade Assessment.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. Yeah, so over the past year, we've completed the detailed structural condition assessment
You can add
of the
one
North
chair
Parkade
to the North Parkade Assessment.
with our consultant Gemtech. That work included multiple site inspections, testing of the concrete deck, steel framing, and a review of the structure's remaining service life. The assessment confirms what we expected for a structure built in 1968 that the parkade is in generally poor condition, with advanced deterioration on the concrete deck, perimeter steel, and some foundation components. Based on their findings, Gemtech's recommended immediate controls, namely load restrictions, removal of exposed rebar hazards, and closing the southernmost row of parking until guardrail connections can be addressed. These measures are intended to manage risk while council considers longer-term decisions for the site. At the same time, both the consultant and staff believe the structure has reached a point where major reinvestment or replacement should be evaluated. So before committing significant capital dollars to interim repairs, we believe a replacement options study should be a part of the next step. The study would look at viable replacement approaches, confirm costs, and help determine whether further interim repairs make sense or whether efforts should be focused on replacement planning. So in terms of options before council tonight, the recommendation that we're going with for staff is to do the immediate implements that Gemtech has recommended, the identified safety controls being the load restrictions, removal of exposed rebar, and closing the southernmost row of parking, and proceed with the replacement options study. Alternatively, council could choose to move directly into design and tender for the full replacement. And in closing, staff are asking council to first ensure public safety through immediate controls, and second, to authorize the work needed to clearly define the best long-term path forward for the North Parkade. Happy to answer any questions.
I look at the parkade, and I mean, this isn't a great news story because it means we need to do work, but I feel like I'm equating this to wastewater for the previous 20 years, where we just kind of patched it, underinvested in it, kind of just kicked it a little bit down the road, and now we're at the place where it's like, we have to just bite the bullet, do an assessment, see what it needs to finally get it fully taken care of. So, I know there's going to take some time for that, and at least we can use it for vehicles. I know that someone's going to ask the question. I did this research today. Maximum vehicle load of 4,000 kilograms. What is that? So a Ford F-350 fully loaded is about 3,500 kilograms. So I know that that'll be the first question we get is, does that mean my car or pickup truck can go on the North Parkade? Yes, it can.
Yeah.
And then the other question we will get, and I think it's important for folks to remember, we already did this before, where we closed it to prohibited of public gatherings and events. So we had to do this before. The last time I think we did an assessment. So the question is always, don't cars weigh more than people? Yes, but cars distribute their weight far broader than a concentration of people. And the example I gave today is if someone stomps on your foot, that can be much more painful than if a car runs over your foot because of the way the weight's distributed. So that's kind of how it's, why it's like that. So just trying to answer some of the questions I know that each of us are going to get. But yeah, I want to open up the floor to questions. Councillor Conklin?
Thank you. Average usage, 34%. Usage when? Like, is this Monday to Friday, or is this?
That's, I believe, the
overall?
main usage time, the utilization of the parkade, for sure, throughout the week. Yeah, and I think maybe you're referring to the downtown study that was completed in 2023?
Yeah, in 2023.
Yeah, so the recommendation from that study was, replacement and or removal of the North Parkade could be considered, but due to it being so vital to King Street, there needs to be another consideration, whether that's an expansion to town center parking. Unfortunately, I believe there's 35, maybe 40 parking spaces at town center. The North Parkade has 70, and so replacing those 70 would be really difficult in that downtown area here in town.
So, roughly 70 parking spots on the parkade. So is it fair to say that roughly 25 of them are being used if it's 34% usage, like 25 on average?
That would be about a third, 25 of 70, a little over a third being used. I'm not sure how many, you go down there throughout the day and there's a lot of parking passes being used, and weekdays when it's getting its it's the brunt of the use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool, thanks.
Councillor Newell.
Roughly how many parking spaces will we be shutting off by blocking that southern end?
It would be the two furthermost,
Oh, okay.
the southernmost, nearest the old bridge.
Looking at, I think, the quoted pricing in the report, and forgive me, I'm just kind of adding the immediate costs are about $25,500 in the short term. I'm ignoring the new anchors, but that's another $25,000 for a replacement study, which presumably has to be done within the next 12 months, I think is your recommendation, give or take?
It
Somewhat
is,
soon?
based on
In a year or
Gemtech's
two.
report, the replacement option study was actually, I think, a short-term measure within the next 2 years. We believe it's prudent to get ahead and ensure that, I think some of the other longer term, but before replacement were like the anchor bolts and the base plates,
Yeah.
which were like $30,000 and $20,000. If the study warrants us replacing it sooner than that, perhaps that $50,000 is more prudent to be put into that replacement.
Well, I'm just thinking, because I assume the motion tonight you would want to proceed with the immediate three recommendations would be 25,000.
Yes,
Correct?
yeah. The load restrictions, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because it's like 20,000 for traffic barriers for the South Row. Yeah.
Yep.
I guess my question that I'm leading to is, have we ever decided where those funds are coming from?
So we
Like-
have a budget for the North Parkade.
Mhm.
I believe we had a budget for last year. It was carried forward. Is that right, Matt? Sorry.
Come on down.
So with I think later on in the memo, so I'll pick it up, drop it. This year we allocated in the proposed budget, or the approved budget, $225,000, and we did carry over the amount from last year, $150. So there's sufficient funds to complete both any immediate things we need to do, plus the replacement study. Staff are suggesting that we expedite the replacement study so that council again can prepare for capital budget discussions, which again, I know we just approved budget, but it's not that far away. We'll be talking about next year's budget.
Thank you.
Other questions on this? Councillor Caldwell.
I assume, I know the answer for this, but I want to assume, are staff completely confident that the interim safety controls will be fine?
Based on the engineering assessment, I would say and recognizing what we see in the field on the south end, which has been a concern, and the fact that we are being duly diligent by suggesting we do a replacement study as soon as possible, and entering into the next capital budget, staff feel we're fine at this point.
Okay. Other questions? If not, someone prepared to, yes, please, Councillor Newell.
I move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater direct staff to begin implementation of the safety controls recommended by Gemtech, which includes the posting of signage for a maximum vehicle live load of 4,000 kilograms, the prohibiting of public gatherings and events, the installation of traffic barriers to close the southernmost row of parking spaces pending guardrail connection repairs, and the removal of exposed rebar trip hazards from the deck surface, and further that council approve proceeding with a replacement option study for the structure.
Thank you. Seconded by Deputy Mayor McDonald. Further discussion? Those all in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Well, none of us are probably looking forward to the price tag. I'm certainly looking forward to having a discussion about a replacement of the parkade and not patching the holes. So thank you to staff for that. We are down to addition to the MJSB 2026-27 budget previously approved, and this is for new office space.
So the intermunicipal agreement that the town has with the partner municipal units to the Joint Services Board requires that anytime there are unbudgeted expenditures that are in excess of $200,000, that they come to the councils for approval, because it's a larger number. And in this case, we have a recommended unbudgeted expenditure. So the Joint Services Board is looking at an office relocation, and they would be relocating from the Aberdeen site to Welltide, which is out in the district of Lunenburg and Cookville. The annual difference in rent is $35,000 a year. So currently it's $43,000 where they are, and the planned rent is $78,000. They will be moving at the end of September, so start of October 1st. So that means there's a $17,000 difference for the year. The motion you'll see has $28,000 as the budget impact, as there may be a leasing issue with respects to breaking the lease earlier than the lease envisioned. So there'd be an extra $10,000 added on to that. So it says up to $28,000. So if we're able to negotiate that down, it won't be 28, but it could go up to that. The larger amount, the $333,000 or $337,675 is the fit-up cost. So that is being recommended as an unbudgeted expenditure. That would be funded from reserve of the Joint Services Board. So there's been reserve set aside for capital, and this would be funded using some of the reserves that they have. So there wouldn't be a bill sent to the town for that extra cost, but it would be taken from reserve that had been set aside to pay for future capital. So in essence, you're still paying just from a reserve that was set up. So that's the board had considered this and recommended it forward to the councils for approval. So it would be for the extra cost and rent for the new location, for the lease cost, as well as the fit-up cost to modify the space to fit their needs.
Questions? You can direct them all to Councillor Conklin. That was a look. Councillor Newell.
Where are we proposing to pull the up to what, 28,000 unbudgeted expense from?
So the town's share of that wouldn't be 28,000.
Sorry, yes.
Yes, so the town's share of that would be 8,758. That would be unbudgeted, and that would have to come from either surplus at the end of the year, if we have a surplus, or we would use our contingency. Yeah.
Other questions on this? If not, someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Conklin, thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. I move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater approve the request from the Municipal Joint Services Board for additional 26-27 budget funding in the amount of up to $28,161 for increased office lease costs required for the relocation of the to the Welltide facility, with town share being $8,758 and $337,675 for the fit-up costs for the space being leased, of which the fit-up cost is to be funded through existing MJSB reserves.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Wynot. Further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Under 11.3, privacy policies. So we gave notice to this, notice for this at the last meeting. So here we are.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this is a recommendation for Council to approve 3 new policies: Town of Bridgewater's Privacy Policy 120, Employee Privacy Policy 121, and Privacy Breach Management Policy 122. As you know, Bill C-150 brought in some new legislation in October 2025, and this will come into effect in 1 April 2027. And so with this, it establishes we must establish a privacy policy and have a required privacy management program. So very quickly, I'm just going to give you the highlights for those 3 policies. Town of Bridgewater Privacy Policy 120 defines personal information, and it tells how we're going to collect, use, protect, and store that information, and it talks about consent that's required to get that information. Employee Privacy Policy 121, and this will be an amendment to our personnel policy, but this will state what TOB collects, how we collect it, why we collect personal information, and what the employee's rights are for that personal information management. Privacy Breach Management Policy 122 will cover the direction to staff on reporting and talks about a list of definitions for breach management policy. So I've also got here Eric Lawton, who is the author of these policies, who recently joined the MJSB as the privacy officer is going to support Modal, Town of Mahone Bay, and Bridgewater for the next couple of years. So if there's detailed questions, Eric would be more than happy to give you all of the background on those reports.
Thank you. Questions, detailed hard questions for Eric.
Yeah.
Yeah, just give us a minute, we're gonna think of a couple.
Are they going to be private questions or?
Well, that's it, how can he answer them, there's privacy involved.
I apologize for those watching at home.
So if you can't have some fun on a Monday night, it's just a regular Monday, so. Are there any questions for this? Eric's just doing such great work. Yes, Eric, sorry, I meant the other, Eric. Yes, Councillor Wynod.
I'd like to move that town council for the town of Bridgewater approve an amendment to the personnel policy and procedures manual with the insertion of subsection 10.10, employee privacy policy, and further that policy 120, town of Bridgewater privacy policy, and policy 122, privacy breach management policy, be approved as part of the town's privacy management program to implement and maintain privacy control measures for data managed by the town.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Conklin. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. I've never heard the word privacy said so many times.
We're very proud.
11.4, Lunenburg County Wheels. As we know, they gave a presentation at one of our last meetings, and they have made a request to serve as a shuttle without commercial aspect. So you want to maybe remind us and the public what that means?
So we have, the town of Bridgewater has a taxi bylaw right now, and that taxi bylaw sets out fares for different types of rides that taxi services may provide. Changing their license to a commercial vehicle license would require that they fall under our taxi bylaw and obtain a license under that. So that means that they would have to, per our bylaw, use the posted rates that are established in the bylaw. Their concern is that's not necessarily going to work for what they want to do. If they do door-to-door service, that's picking up someone at one place and taking them somewhere else that looks like a taxi, feels like a taxi, it would be a taxi, and there would be a rate for that. Shuttle or I think they did some charter type work would maybe a little different, but our taxi bylaw right now doesn't have a rate for that. So our bylaw would require that, our bylaw requires anytime you establish a rate, a type of service that would fall under that the taxi operators are required to come together and make a recommendation to council on a rate. And we'd have to look at amending our bylaw to accommodate that. Otherwise, they'd have to use our rate per passenger, and that, as I say, may not be what they want at the end of the day. So there's some things that council may have to consider if they wish to go down that road. One is amending the bylaw to enable that, consulting with the taxi operators to have them agree to a posted and a rate for shuttle service or charter service. That would be different than their posted rates for their passenger service that they provide. Then council has to give some thought to whether the taxi operators would be open to that. So consulting with them to see if they're in agreement with that, because it does impact their business in some way. One's a for-profit and the others are not for-profit, so that creates some complexities too. So if council wants the issue explored, the next course of action would be to direct staff to bring back a report that identifies how to go about doing that and the options for amendments before we do consultation with the operators, and then kind of outline what possible consultation you may wish to consider.
Councillor Newell.
Help me understand, just reading the bylaw or the policy, it feels like their existing services should fall, like they should be classified as a taxi now. So just help me understand what's the difference there.
They're not a commercial vehicle at this point. I'm not too sure if it has to do with their not-for-profit status and their operation, but they provide a very specific service. So they're not licensed as a taxi right now. Yeah. It's the switching of their license that brings them in under our bylaw.
And forgive me, Tim, you might not end up being the right person, but I guess to me, like, and just, I don't quite understand the difference of those, because do they not pick people up at their homes and then bring them to where they want to go and then bring them back?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what a taxi does.
Yes, I understand that, but they're not licensed as a commercial vehicle, right?
Yeah, but I guess my point is I feel like they should be, just based on reading our existing policy.
So the Commercial Motor Vehicle Act comes into play there. So, so we did get a legal opinion on this to make sure that we weren't thinking the same way.
Thank you. See,
Like,
that's
it doesn't make sense,
No.
but yes, no, our solicitor also recommended that if you want to consider this, that's the route we would have to go. Yeah.
So I don't want to, I know staff are busy, and I don't want to overcomplicate things. Is there not already a mechanism in place if they want to make a change, they have to, we know they have to meet with the current taxi owners, that's the way it's written, if they want to request a change. I would suggest that before staff time is spent having that conversation to set that up, that they just have that conversation. Because that, to me, will probably make or break this. And the reason I say that is, our taxi drivers, it's their livelihood, this is a business, and it's a very slippery slope if we start using public funds to disadvantage private enterprise. So, a shuttle may be different. Like, I know that when they presented, they talked about a shuttle taking people to the beach and things like that. And to me, that is a little bit different than if it is a taxi service, then we already have a taxi bylaw. And again, I wouldn't want to be using public funds to then, would push out taxi drivers out of business. So would it not make more sense for them to make the request to have a meeting with the taxi drivers, just have that initial conversation before we put a lot of staff time and money and resources into
Yeah, I think
doing that? Maybe we can facilitate the meeting.
Yeah, we'd
but-
have to facilitate it, but yeah, if you want to seek the input of the taxi operators prior to going down that road, then yes, that probably would give you some insight with respects to any concerns that may be raised.
Because
Yeah.
how the bylaws word, they have to get that anyway.
Yeah,
So I would front-end load that conversation because and maybe it will work out. Maybe they'll work together, or maybe it will be a 5-minute conversation of, no, you're going to put me out of business. I don't want to say either way, but yeah, I recognize all the staff that are in the room here have a lot of things on the side of their desk already, and then to give direction to get them to set all this stuff up might be unnecessary, so.
Yep.
I don't know what council's thinking, but yeah, I'm seeing nods. So do you need direction to do that? You still need direction just to engage with
direction to engage the taxi
the taxi
operator.
drivers, taxi operators?
Yeah, to determine their support for or against.
Okay, so, yeah, looking for some direction to engage the taxi operators to determine their support or lack of support for this. If someone's prepared to make that motion. Councillor Newell, seconded by Deputy Mayor McDonald. Further discussion on that? All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. I don't want to be like the bearer of bad news. I'm hoping, like, if it works out, great, but for all the reasons why, they have to have that conversation. Down to 12.1, first reading for municipal planning strategy and subdivision bylaw for parkland dedication.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Parkland dedication. Staff brought forward a report for first reading concerning these same amendments at the February 23rd, 2026 regular council meeting. After discussion, council deferred the item back to staff for further analysis and consideration for council's decision-making ability to ensure the town is receiving land only when deemed necessary. At the February 23rd meeting, staff recommended policy changes and amendments to the subdivision bylaw to include proximity analysis within the definition of usable land, to inform requirements for parkland dedication. If the subdivision is outside of an 800-meter distance from existing parkland, located in the park zone, the recreation zone, or the conservation zone, parkland dedication would be in the form of land. If within the 800-meter distance, policy and regulation would point to cash of equivalent value. So staff reevaluated the proposed amendments with a view to condition any parkland dedication in the form of land upon further decision of council. The town's legal counsel was consulted, and in the end, that further conditioning was deemed not legally advisable. The Municipal Government Act intends for provisions to be enacted within a subdivision bylaw regarding parkland dedication, land or cash in lieu, without necessitating further decision by council. Council determines the contents of the bylaw and what is considered usable land. However, the regulatory requirements to implement the policy are meant to be clear enough to allow the development officer to be the administrator. Therefore, staff bring back the same amendment package as was presented to council at the meeting held February 23rd. There are two parts to this amendment package. Firstly, the evaluation criteria through an addition to the definition of usable land and a map schedule of the subdivision bylaw where land can only be considered where it is located outside of an 800-meter distance from existing parkland per the zoning map. Secondly, the requirement for an area of usable land or cash of equivalent value within the subdivision equal to 10% of the area of the lots to be approved. And this is an increase from the current requirement equal to 5%. Important to this discussion and consideration of these amendments is the definition of usable land. The usable land definition is a determining factor between land and cash. Primarily that currently, usable land must consist of a parcel having an area of 43,560 square feet or more. That's 1 acre. That minimum size isn't proposed to change. By having this 1 acre size requirement, regardless of the subdivision's proximity to existing parkland, dedication is most likely going to be in the form of cash. For context, to get to an acre based on the 5% requirement, if we envision a subdivision proposing 10,000 square foot lots, an average size lot for single and 2-unit dwellings, the number of new lots proposed would have to be 80 plus to get to an acre. Now, if council approves the change to a 10% requirement, the number of new lots proposed would be closer to 40. More of a chance that it could be a required land dedication, but still a rare occurrence to see a subdivision of that scale. And may potentially less likely with the provision that the subdivision must be outside of an 800-meter distance from existing parkland. In the end, the introduction of the proximity requirement, the 800-meter distance, may not create much of a change because of the minimum parcel size requirement. Its importance relates to the Municipal Government Act, Section 271(3)(h), which allows the municipality to require up to 10% of the area of the lots if the requirements and the reasons for it are provided in the municipal planning strategy. Staff took an approach through spatial or proximity analysis to help justify the change to 10% and built new policy framework in Section 11.2.2 of the municipal planning strategy around well-distributed open spaces. To increase to a 10% dedication when in the form of cash of equivalent value, that increase would help council's intention to improve the quality of the town's open spaces. Municipal Government Act Section 273(5) states that council shall use these funds for the acquisition of and capital improvements to parks, playgrounds, and similar public purposes. When receiving cash in lieu, the funds would be directed to a dedicated parks reserve per policy 21 and redistributed based on the parks improvement plan and other capital budget initiatives. It's recommended this evening that council conduct first reading to the municipal planning strategy and subdivision bylaw, to the amendments, for the municipal planning strategy and subdivision bylaw, and schedule a public hearing during the regularly scheduled meeting on May 25th, 2026. Council may also defer or deny the amendments in question. I'll take any questions.
Questions for Mr. Brown? Deputy Mayor?
So through our planning and some of the exercises we've been doing, we've kind of identified a couple areas of town that are very underserved and we would probably consider a priority. They're not necessarily where development's going to happen. So, and when you're talking about number of lots, that was really helpful. But then I think about the number of lots that are not paying tax because they could be an undeveloped space waiting to become a park in 5-7 years, something like that. So is there, when you look at taking cash in lieu instead at this point in our planning and so on, if we took cash in lieu and didn't take any land dedication, do you think it would allow us to be more strategic in making sure, if a subdivision went up in the upper lands on North Street, that we could buy land to make sure a park goes there?
Yes, I do, and I think the increase to 10% is really helpful in that regard. So, you know, to build a reserve, and as mentioned, you know, those funds can be for the acquisition of, and also capital improvements to parks, playgrounds, and used for other similar purposes. So, you know, to build up that reserve gives gives council more opportunity and flexibility to you know, to look at acquisition or improvements to existing spaces, and you know that's a big part of you know the Parks Improvement Plan. You know the other work that goes towards parks planning. You know, we've done that spatial analysis. We do know where those underserved areas of town are based on that analysis. So yeah, I think in my mind it sets up nicely. If we are able to build up a reserve to go forward with.
Any warnings about doing that? Any drawbacks to doing that?
No, I don't believe so. I think that's the intention of collecting cash in lieu of equivalent value in these situations is to allow council to you know then you know make expenditures based on good practice and evaluations from your staff.
Thank you.
Councilor Caldwell.
Can you remind us how the 800-meter distance between parks was arrived upon?
Yes, yeah. So 800 meters is sort of derived from, it starts with 400 meters. So 400 meter being, from a walking distance perspective, about a 5-minute walk. All right, so taking that in consideration, if you have a park in one location, another park, so it'd be 400, it'd be the sum of two 400s to ensure that there is the closing of that gap. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. It's not coming to me right now. I have explained that probably a little bit better in my head. But it's 400 meters times 2, and 400 meters is based on that 5-minute walk. And so you just ensure that the gaps are closed so that there's 400 meters in any direction can get to a park of some sort.
So just piggybacking up, that's where I'm confused, because I understand the 800 meters apart, right? So it's almost a kilometer. You don't really want too many people being more than a kilometer, I guess, for some green space. And then I get totally confused by the 400 meter part. So the idea is if you lived in the ideal location, you would have 2 parks within 400 meters apart from each other. So
yeah, I had it written, I think, quite well in a previous version of this. And if it's okay, I'll just read this. So when considering 2 parks, each to be ideally within 400-meter walking distance for residents, an 800-meter distance is proposed as the minimum distance between parks. This is to ensure that the park service areas do not overlap and that every resident is within a reasonable walking distance, the 400-meter radius, of a park. The minimum distance between the 2 parks is effectively the sum of the individual service radii, so the 400 and 400 meters totaling 800. I don't know if that helps clear it up. I think that's basically what I said before. So this creates an efficient distribution pattern and so on and so forth. But does that help explain it?
I still find it a little bit confusing. I get you have 2 circles and you put them together and the edge of each is 800. And if you live in the ideal location, then you could be 400 meters from 2 parks. And if you're in the wrong location, you got 1 park next to you and then the next park is 800 meters away. Sure. Kind of thing. Yeah, I think I got it. I don't know if it helps me. I think I got it. Councilor Caldwell.
Well, I think, if I may summarize, that ideally it means everybody's within a 10-minute walk of a park.
A 5-minute walk
Everybody's
of a park.
within
10 minutes,
a
isn't
5-minute
it?
walk.
Oh, I thought.
The worst case is 10 minutes. The bet that you want everyone within a 5-minute
Yeah, I
walk.
mean, worst case is 10 minutes away from the park.
Ideally, worst case would be
confused.
5 minutes away. So everyone is within 400 meters Oh, no, maybe I missed
think-
that.
So now we're
Yeah, you're
confusing.
right, You're right.
Okay, because I thought I had it.
I guess where I'm going is, what I don't think is what we want is a park every 400 meters. Right? So this is not what you're proposing. You're proposing that they would be 800 meters
Yes.
apart.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Because to me, those are two very different things, right? Because it's not just, and I've talked about this before, in my head, I can hear Bill McGinnis sitting over here talking about this, and it's not just the green space. There's always a cost associated with receiving the green space. And then the other side of that is if that green space was going to be developed and is now not developed, we also now don't have the tax revenue. So you've got a cost and you've lost the tax revenue. And so I just want to make sure we're very strategic. So the 800 meters makes more sense. And then I felt much better when you explained the size and what determines it, and it would be like 40 lots would be really one of the triggers, and that helped me a little bit more, because, again, there's a cost to turn something into a park. We have to be very specific with, is that what we want and where we want it, but this might solve that, so. I feel better now. All is not lost.
Sorry for the explanation.
So just to be clear, it's an 800-meter separation distance between the open space parcels.
That's the intention.
Yes,
Yes.
and that is written that way in the amendments.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Other questions? Deputy Mayor?
I just want to say, just because I want to be able to prioritize certain areas, I would rather go to cash in lieu every time with no parkland dedication, so that we don't end up continuing to put parks where we already have some and kind of filling in some of those little gaps before we've served underserved areas, especially now that you've said it's really unlikely that we're going to get parkland dedication. So we will still be building a reserve, but we could get a little 1 acre here instead of what we really need to serve the underserved areas like North King Street, North Street, and those areas. So I'd rather take the cash every time and set ourselves up really well to be able to take advantage of any opportunity that comes up to serve those areas. I'm switching on you from where you were starting, but.
No, and I understand that perspective. I will say, if I may, that like, so, with the 800 meter, distance, and there is a map in a report. I apologize, I didn't have one ready for display here, but when you do look at the overlaps with the current park network, open space network, the areas that are left, the areas that would be outside of 800 meters, are largely, in staff's view, those underserved areas. So I don't know if that helps. I certainly understand, also what you're saying, and just cash is most helpful. But
Yep.
So, am I understanding, we could end up with another park in Glen Allen, which has a pretty significant destination park, before we, and not end up with anything on North Street, or money in the bank to invest on North Street when the opportunity comes along?
yes, so yes, theoretically, yes, you could have subdivision occur in one area of town where council feels there's already that area is well served by parkland, by open space. I will say that I theoretically, yes, that can happen, but in Glen Allen there is a big waiver area as well, which is part of the reason why we don't talk about parkland dedication as much as we could. When Glen Allen Drive was extended from Hollingsworth down to LaHave Street, 2006, and the town received 18 acres for Generations Act Park. Council, through motion, declared a waiver area for basically all of the Glen Allen lands, or the Glen Allen lands that were under the town's control through the Bridgewater Development Association at the time. So we won't see that up there.
Okay.
In fact, there's no cash coming either. There's a waiver of parkland dedication requirements. But to your point, yes, it could happen that the subdivision is taking place in perhaps not in the area of town that council views as being underserved. And therefore, but is it not still underserved if it's outside of 800 meters would be what I would ask.
Right.
Councillor Newell.
Forgive me if I missed this, but if I understand this, if it's within the 800 meters, it has to be cash. You can't do land.
Correct.
And then if it's outside, can they do land or cash? Or is it just land?
No, it would be land, but it needs to be at least an acre in size. So there's a usable land definition, and that usable land definition says, I mean, there's a number of criteria there that need to be met, but I'll say the main two would be that it needs to be at least an acre in size, and it has to be outside of 800 meters of an existing park per the zoning map.
Where the previous policy was like blanket, but it could do land or cash, regardless, right?
And to be clear, the usable land definition has included that 1 acre provision. That's not, that's there, that's current, and that's not proposed to change, but yeah, the change is really that 800 meter proximity.
Because I guess my question, maybe a bit to the deputy mayor's point, is could you still offer for the folks who are building outside of that 1 acre, could you still have them pick whether they want to do cash or land, rather than just saying you can only do land?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know. I think that sounds like a nice idea. I've shared my views on this past. Definitely believe in more park space, but I mean, I think to the point of it allows us to build the reserve. I don't know if there's opposition around that, but I personally like that idea.
Further discussion on it, Deputy Mayor?
That's right, you're saying you like it the way it is?
No, sorry. I'm saying, and I think to your point was, if it's outside of the 800 meters, they should give us. They should be the option to do land or cash. Where whether they're within the 800 meters, they can only do cash. Because as it's written, it would be, if it's in the 800 meters, only cash. If it's within the outside, only land. Granted, a minimum of an acre, but I'm saying, well, why don't we still give them the option to do land or cash if it's outside, so that we can have if they have that choice, we can have that money to then pick where we want to have a park, should we choose to.
Gotcha.
Well, that goes,
Thank
does
you.
this go back to the legal opinion on the bylaw has to be clearer, or is that's different? Oh, that was for council to have that.
That was for council to have that
choice.
decision-making
But
authority.
there is a piece there that, you know, to move to 10%, what the Municipal Government Act is asking for is, you know, for some rationale, you know, in terms of, you know, why do we need, you know, why does council want to push that up to a 10% requirement rather than 5? And like I say, that's part of the reason the proximity analysis is in there, just because it speaks to how open space networks are designed, and you know how well distributed open spaces you know, impact and improve you know, the community and well-being and that sort of thing. And I will say that the way it is currently, it's yes, if forgetting about the 800 meter rule, if it's over an acre and it's meeting the definition of usable land, it's their decision whether they give us land or cash. It's not staff's. It's not, we can't dictate that. That is their decision. And I, you know, have had a lot of conversations around parkland dedication, and it's not clear to me which ends up being the preference. It tends to go both ways.
Councilor Caldwell?
I like the changes as proposed, because I think the chances of us receiving a park in an area that we don't really want it are quite small. And by contrast, there is a good chance that we would get a park in an area where we need one. And if we have, I mean, the idea of building up, I think the cash reserves are a good idea, but there's also no guarantee that there's going to be land for sale in the area we want to buy it. Whereas if they're putting in a subdivision in a certain area, presto, you get the park in the area where we want it. So I like the changes as proposed.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? This is going to be an interesting vote. Yeah, I see both sides, right? Like I don't want parks where we don't need like land that then just sits there, and we've had experience in the community where it's just kind of sat there for many, many years and didn't really serve its purpose that we wanted it to. But I feel like maybe staff have been a little bit more intentional with it will be most likely cash, and if it's big enough and usable enough, then it probably needed to be a park anyway. For me, I just kept going back to the map, just going to Deputy Mayor McDonald's points, and I'm even struggling to find where you would put a park based on the 800 meters, because we have so much green space. We do absolutely have underserved communities with no land that we could probably turn into parkland anyway, because it's privately owned, to Councillor Caldwell's point. But if we look at that map, it is quite impressive how much green space is in this community already. So it will be interesting to see if it translates into green space based on the distance. I think it's going to be mostly cash and fall under that 800 meter, which would then allow us to deploy that cash in parkland and be more deliberate. So I can see both sides. It's very hard. So if there's no other discussion, is someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Caldwell.
I move the town council for the town of Bridgewater hereby conduct first reading of bylaw 231, a bylaw to amend the municipal planning strategy and subdivision bylaw as contained in Appendix A of document 26-021 for amendments with respect to subdivision and parkland dedication and pursuant to section 205 and 206 of the Municipal Government Act, give notice of a public hearing to be held on this matter during the regular meeting of Bridgewater Council on May 25th, 2026.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Vergier. We get to do this all over again in a few weeks. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. First reading, chapter 212 for sidewalk cafe bylaw.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. As I'm sure most of you know, a sidewalk cafe is a temporary extension of a restaurant, bar, or other business that is located on a sidewalk or other town-owned property. The intention of a sidewalk cafe is to create an open and inviting space that blend with street life, allowing the public to enjoy the outdoors while still immersed in the community. In 2025, the province of Nova Scotia adopted the Built Environment Accessibility Standard regulations. These standards focus on public outdoor and recreational spaces. Given the nature of sidewalk cafes being located on public property, they are therefore subject to these accessibility standards. And there is a requirement to comply by April 1st, which explicitly includes sidewalk cafes that were installed or reinstalled after April 1st, 2026. Meaning all sidewalk cafes are now subject to this new standard. So there are a number of changes that we are proposing to make to our bylaws to align with those standards. Firstly, the non-slip component. The proposed amendment to section 15D includes standardized terminology by using the term slip resistant as opposed to non-slip, aligning with the Nova Scotia Built Environment Accessibility Standard regulations. Additional clarity was provided by specifying recommended materials and requiring that those chosen surfaces be approved by the development officer. For Council's awareness, this was in collaboration with the building official who suggested specific non-slip materials. The next was the orientation of decking. The proposed amendment to section 15 includes requirement for any gaps in decking to be oriented perpendicular to the direction of travel. Parallel decking can pose issues for wheeled mobility devices, strollers, walkers, etc. Given the nature of temporary sidewalks, it's difficult to achieve perpendicular decking in all situations, hence where possible, the where possible clause. Including the requirement where it is possible to achieve, where possible to achieve, this will support more safe sidewalk for accessibility purposes. This requirement would be above and beyond the standard, and further was in collaboration with the building official who suggested this. Next, the vehicular barrier. The proposed amendment to section 15E includes increasing the height of required barriers on the traffic side of the temporary sidewalk from the existing height requirement of 60 centimeters or 23.6 inches to 81 centimeters or 31.8 inches. Further, it requires reflective elements on the barriers separating the temporary sidewalk from the traffic. These amendments will bring the bylaw into conformance with the new standards. There's a small housekeeping amendment to section 17, which corrects can to cane in reference to preserving a barrier, in reference to a cane detectable barrier for those with sight loss. There was a brief public consultation with all the businesses who previously had sidewalk cafes and are still on King Street. Neither of those business owners intended to install a sidewalk cafe during the 2026 season. However, they were notified about the amendments. So the proposed amendments are to align with the built environment standards. Slip-resistant material was added to the requirement section 15. The height of the vehicular barrier is to be increased, and additionally added reflective elements. And these two amendments will align with the standards. Orientation of the decking was not included in the accessibility standard, but staff have included, based on previous conversations and based on previous discussions about sidewalk cafes, just through public comments. And further, our bylaw already exceeds the necessary width for the temporary sidewalk. It is recommended that council give notice of intention to amend Chapter 212 Sidewalk Cafe bylaw as per the proposed changes in Appendix A.
Thanks, Connor. Questions on this? Deputy Mayor?
So having these standards kind of gives some stability to this now, right? Because we've changed this bylaw a few times. It costs money when people have to make changes. So with the standards in place, this should be pretty static for a while, right?
Yeah, and this is across the province as well, so there's a lot of alignment across municipalities who had previous sidewalk cafe bylaws. So we'll see more of a standard emerging from this.
Right.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Other questions? Councillor Conklin?
Not directly related to Connor's presentation, but on the fee side, have we considered charging the fee based on square footage of a sidewalk cafe? I think it's $200 right now, but it'd be $200 for a cafe that's sidewalk cafe that's 4x4 versus something that's 40x40.
Just to that point, there is standards or requirements in the bylaw that it needs to be within the frontage of your building, and I believe that can be extended with property owner permission for the adjacent structures, but they are limited to the width of that building without that property owner permission.
So we will be reviewing our fees.
Yeah.
And we have that targeted to start that in the second or third quarter. So we'll ensure that we kind of look at how other places are charging their fees for sidewalk cafes to see if they've chosen that option. Yeah.
It's a good question, though. So. Other questions for Connor? Hearing none, is someone prepared to make a motion? Please, Deputy Mayor, thank you.
Move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater hereby conduct first reading of Chapter 238, bylaw to amend Chapter 212 Sidewalk Cafe bylaw, as contained in Appendix A and B of Document 26-033, for amendments to the sections with respect to temporary sidewalks, public barrier, and penalties, and pursuant to Section 168 of the Municipal Government Act. Give notice of intention to conduct second and final reading of same during the regular meeting of Bridgewater Council on May 25th, 2026.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Wynot. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you very much. Down to 12.3, property matter for PID 607-11710.
Mayor?
Welcome back.
Thank you. Staff received a request from property owner on January 26th, 2026, for council's consideration to acquire a parcel of land. So they're asking the town to acquire a parcel of land. It's property ID 607-11710. The subject lands are located at the town boundary line, abutting LaHave Street. Lot size is 10,000 square feet. However, it is very linear in nature, abutting the LaHave River, sort of sandwiched between the street and the river. There are portions within and outside of the town, and it was once the location of the highway, now LaHave Street or Highway 3. And when the street was straightened in 1940, the former right-of-way lands were seemingly intended to transfer to private ownership. That's what we understand. However, that didn't occur except for taxation purposes. The former roadbed through the site is located within the LaHave Street Highway 3 right-of-way currently, based on the provincial mapping database. The property owner is offering the opportunity to rectify the ownership situation through the town's acquisition of the full property, since we own the adjacent, for at least a portion of it when it's within town street. However, the subject property is lacking a clear title of property that is free of encumbrances or disputes. With the disputed ownership, clearing title of property is crucial to acquire freely. Therefore, staff recommend that council do not pursue acquisition of the subject lands at this time.
Thanks, Nick. Questions for Nick? All right, we're looking for a recommendation from council. Councilor Caldwell, thank you.
I move the town council for the town of Bridgewater direct staff to discontinue discussions with respect to the acquisition of land identified as PID 607-11710 until such time as there is clear title of the property free from encumbrances or legal disputes.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Newell. Further discussion on that? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Down to 12.2, Lunenburg County Regional Anti-Racism and Anti-Discrimination Advisory Committee participation.
Sorry.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a recommendation coming from the Lunenburg County Regional Anti-Racism Anti-Discrimination Committee. The recommendation is that the town of Bridgewater continue its participation in the Regional Anti-Racism Anti-Discrimination Advisory Committee with a modified role as a resource and advisory committee that will review the town's anti-racism plans as mandated by the province. I know you've all read this, but just a couple of quick highlights. This committee was created as a pilot in January 2024, and due to some personnel changes, it's now extended until the end of September of this year. This discussion is really not about the issue of whether or not we should be pursuing anti-discrimination and anti-racism measures. It's really about staff's recognition that council is committed to this work through the strategic plan, and we're pursuing that work. One of the key responsibilities for the committee is to develop and recommend to municipalities a regional action plan, which would provide regional level guidance, coordinated approaches, and strategies or actions that would be taken. For a variety of reasons, the committee has not yet provided this, and as was mentioned earlier, there is a draft plan, but that's all we have at this point. And I just end my part by saying a decision to dissolve or withdraw from this regional committee is a governance assessment, and it will not change our values or priorities as staff.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor McDonald.
So I have a few things to say, if I can take a couple minutes here. So I'm the counselor appointed to the Anti-Racism and Discrimination Advisory Council Committee, ARADAC from this point forward, because I won't get that right twice. A couple of my fellow committee members were here this evening as well. They're two of the 5 community reps. And I first of all want to acknowledge the bravery and character that it takes to volunteer to come to a table like ARADAC. I've sat on a lot of committees over the years, and that may have been the first time that I arrived nervous. I didn't know who was going to be in the room. I didn't know what the response would be if I made a mistake or got something wrong. I didn't know what the expectations of me might be. So for those community members for them to step up to advocate for their community, for them to be willing to have very uncomfortable conversations and to carry a burden that they could have chosen not to is very admirable. So I want to thank the 5 community reps who stepped up to the plate for that. That's a really big deal, and it was a heavy burden to take on. But so I want to kind of recap, because I think the report covered it to some degree, but the public and some of my fellow committee members may not have all of the history. I'll make it brief, Mike. He's got candy, so he's okay. Okay. So we started this work as a town 2019, 2020, and that wasn't without significant challenges and feedback from those with lived experience that was taking a toll on them. When the province announced that each municipality would be required to create a plan, we joined in on those regional efforts. That didn't get started until it was April of 2023, correct? Yeah. So it took a couple of years to get there, but then the ball was rolling. Bridgewater rarely waits to be asked to do something, and even more rarely provides the minimum required. And I think that stood true in this process. The approach taken to hire a coordinator and strike a committee was not required. It wasn't mandated by the province. We needed to create a plan. It had to be submitted showing how we were going to review and update policies, practices, and the delivery of services with an EDI lens and anti-racism. The decision was taken to take a step further and create a robust plan that created some consistency throughout the region, and to work together in that way. I think when you're working on a regional plan, a coordinator is kind of essential because of the complexities of creating a plan for 5 municipal units with different budgets, different staff, different priorities, different expertise, and so on. So that was an important component if we were doing a regional plan, but it was not mandated by the province. The expectation from my perspective was that it was much like the Accessibility Committee, which I also sit on, and that was to create a high-level plan that the municipalities would commit to, and then the municipalities would have their action items to achieve those commitments and deliver on that plan. So a draft plan, I think everyone here will remember, was accepted by all department councils on April 1st, 2025 to meet the deadline. Due to staffing challenges, an actual plan hadn't been drafted and the committee hadn't even been formed yet at that point. But something had to be submitted for that deadline. We increased our investment along with the other 4 units. That was, I believe it was an unbudgeted expense that we had to come up with from somewhere and extend the agreement by 5 or 6 months to enable the plan to be reviewed by the advisory before it would come to council for adoption. So September will mark, I think, math is not my strong suit. I think it's about 40 months of work and $63,000 invested by the town. We have a draft plan that was put together to meet a deadline. It had 6 areas of focus and 50 action items. I believe there were 50 action items. I'm not sure if I've seen the actual action items, which may or may not be realistic, but it will require many months for the committee to review and work through those to bring a recommendation back to council, the 5 councils. The intermunicipal, and that work really has not started. There has not been a review of those 6 areas of focus. There's not been a clear list of action items. There's really not a significant dent put into that work. So it really would be months of work before it would come back to councillors. And at this point, the intermunicipal agreement ends in 4 months, in September. 2 municipalities have removed themselves from the advisory, and the coordinator's on leave, so not available to the committee. That's unfortunately a lot of time and a lot of money invested with no deliverables at this point. It's literally years and tens of thousands of dollars just from our unit alone. And that's certainly not to place blame. It's very much the nature of the work, the complexity of the intermunicipal projects, and largely staffing challenges. There's also the issue that the committee has expressed their desire to tackle issues in the greater community. That would require a much different approach, much different expertise than we had available to us, and much more significant investment than had currently been made. That's not to say it wouldn't have happened at some point, that there may have been some other projects to take on once this work was tackled, but that wasn't the focus at the time. The terms of reference say that ERIDAC works with partners and communities to help lead and support anti-racism and anti-discrimination initiatives and promote equity, diversity, and inclusion initiatives They would work to identify and address systemic racism and inequity in government policy, legislation, programs, and services. So the committee agreed to and approved those terms of reference, and I feel that the work would have been very disappointing and frustrating to those sitting at the table who really were looking to bite off a much bigger piece of the problem than those terms of reference were really outlining. And I on the committee members, I'm not sure that they were aware that they had come in years into a process that had been drug along slowly. They arrived fresh and ready to go, and were probably pretty blindsided when some of us were ready to throw in the towel. Their first obstacle was our final straw, and I'm not sure that they were really aware of that. I think they were a little bit blindsided by that because they didn't have all of this history and all of that information. And I think it left them feeling unappreciated or like this work wasn't important to us. So I hope that sharing some of that makes the community and those committee members aware that 6 or 7 years of commitment to making this happen and not giving up one roadblock after another. It's clear that it is important, and we've been knocked down on this work before, and we will continue to get up and keep working on it. And this is the next step in that. So I think knowing where we stand today, the only question is how do we get from where we are to action? And we're in a pretty good place right now because, as I said, we rarely wait until somebody tells us that something needs to be done. So the deputy CAO and staff have formed an internal committee with very diverse representation and a lot of lived experience. They've been busy digging into work that they know needs to get done, and they've already made great headway on getting staff, council, and volunteers trained. At a $15,000 investment, that's a pretty big deliverable. So I'm interested at this point in talking about what is already up and running and producing results. I have some questions about how that will work and how we will inject some community input, but I've been talking for a long time, so I'm going to let somebody else go first.
Thank you. Other comments from the table? Councillor Wynot.
I prepared some notes here just to have my thoughts straight, especially on such a topic. And it's based solely on what the deputy mayor just said. I agree wholeheartedly, and I do support the dissolution of the regional ARADAC based on the governance and the sustainability concerns that the deputy mayor has outlined. At the same time, I feel like I need to be clear that this does not represent any retreat from our commitment to addressing racism, discrimination, equity, and inclusion in our community. The stories we heard at the beginning of council tonight bother me deeply, that people go through that in our town. This is actually the contrary. I strongly believe this work must continue and be strengthened within our town. I support advancing this work through a locally managed approach that reflects our community, meets provincial requirements, and aligns with council's priorities. And I'd also like to ask that to ensure transparency and accountability, I'm requesting that staff provide regular updates to council on the anti-racism, equity, diversity, and inclusion work that's being done in-house. That's a lot of work. I'd like to hear more about the plans, the progress on the plans, the engagement, that type of thing, and of course the outcomes, which is the ultimate goal here. And I do believe that this is essential to maintaining council oversight and ensuring ongoing momentum. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Councillor Caldwell.
First, I'd like to say I appreciate the members of the committee who spoke eloquently tonight, and I'm sure they also represent the feelings of many other people in the community. That said, the deputy mayor laid out very well the challenges that we've had with this process, and I will therefore be supporting the motion to discontinue the committee. That said, I think it's very important to point out that that doesn't mean we don't want to continue with this work. It's simply a matter of how we get there, and I think we can have a better way of getting to the same end goal.
Thank you. I'll just add, I'll echo the words of Deputy Mayor, thank you, and those who have spoken. I go back to, we did host the Take a Knee event in town, as one of the speakers, as Caleb mentioned. I've never seen so many people come out to an event, especially at a very difficult time. But from that, we did launch the Bridgewater Anti-Racism Task Force. And part of that was because we had regional discussions and they were not moving forward. There had been some appetite regionally to maybe have a committee to one day do something, and we could not wait. As the Deputy Mayor said, we generally don't wait. Something needs to be done, there's heavy lifting to do, then we get it done. And we formed that committee, and that committee got to work, and it was hard. I acknowledge what one of the speakers said. I don't have the same lived experience. None of us have the same lived experience that a lot of these community members go through. And it was one of the tolls it took on the committee was that community work and dealing with their own lived experience, and then also the piling on of the things that Caleb spoke about that are happening in the community. But it is work that is important. But I think that's where, and you did mention it, the terms of reference. I think there's disappointment in the community or in the committee because they thought that the work they were doing was this, but it's really this. The terms of reference are to work within the municipal structures to deal with our policies and our legislation and everything from hiring practices to the way bylaws are written. And so I think there was a bit of a disconnect of expectations, perhaps, that has led to this being much more complicated in how it's kind of worked or not worked. But I think our demonstrated actions are that this has to continue. And I would say, while I support the dissolution of the committee, it's to make sure that the work gets done, because we're not moving this forward at an acceptable pace for the community. I mean, we've heard that from people. I appreciated his question about asking who has been yelled at for just supporting the Pride Parade. I was just talking with my wife this weekend about when we had some graffiti on the Pride steps, and then we hosted an event behind Town Hall as a show of solidarity with that group. And the hate that came out of just hosting an event, it was horrific and a painful reminder, all while recognizing that I am a straight white male and none of it is directed at me, but rather everyone around me. So there's no question, everyone around this council table knows that this work needs to get done. But I think, as strange as it may sound, the goal for this is to make sure that the work continues. And we do need to go a little faster. And we do have a diverse internal committee that is going to work on kind of the framework that was in the terms of reference for the other, for ERIDAC, right, with working on our policies and bylaws and things like that. And then we'll have to figure out a way as a community, not necessarily regionally, how that community work gets done. But we're not there yet, and that wasn't actually the original goal of standing up this regional committee. So just reinforcing what everyone else said, it is to make sure the momentum continues and that it doesn't stall or go backwards. And I know it's probably hurts a lot for folks to hear that, thinking that they're not being valued or heard. And I guess that's a very long-winded way of saying we do hear you. We do recognize the importance of the work. We're just trying to find a path that actually moves it forward, because it's not getting better and people aren't getting nicer. So, and that we know. I don't know if there's other comments, Sis?
Just for council's information, we will be required still to finalize a plan with the province. The plan that's been presented to the province is draft and still subject to committee and council final approval. And it was a Lunenburg County plan, not a town of Bridgewater plan. So we'll have to bring back to council some options with respects to the structure and how to have that plan developed. Is it with the internal staff committee? Formalize those terms of reference to make sure that they meet council's expectations, or there may be another option for governance structure that council wishes to consider, but the point is we'd have to bring that back and give those options to council on how we're going to complete the plan and develop that implementation plan to ensure those actions get carried out.
And do we have a deadline for that? I recognize that we're already a year late. Our draft was submitted and accepted, but we're still we're over a year behind where the plan was supposed to be submitted.
I don't think there were any deadlines discussed today when we were talking
Okay.
to the province, but I would suspect that, yeah, they probably would want to see that sooner rather than
Yeah.
later.
Okay, yes.
As long as we let them know our plan, and then commit to bringing that plan to them after we develop the structure to do that.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah. Further discussion? If not, Deputy Mayor?
I have a few questions. So right now, we're very fortunate to have diversity on staff, and I hope that they have very long careers with us. But if there is turnover in staff, and we are lacking diversity on an internal committee, do we have any idea how we might handle that?
Well, so there has been some turnover on staff, and we have lost one person that was on the committee, and that will continue. But we've also gained other people, so it's going to continue. The CEO and I were talking today about how we might suggest some options for community representation or additional first voice input. So we don't have a firmed up plan yet, but it's something that's definitely we're having in our sights, and we do need to address if we can't get adequate representation. And again, maybe there may be first voice representation that we can get from staff, but maybe there's a community aspect that's not getting captured either. So there's a couple of different things we need to look at there in terms of representation.
Yep.
That
Okay.
was going to be my next question, is if there was, well, not if, I think it's very important that there is community input. There are probably things that staff still will not say in their workplace, or they don't recognize as being problematic because it's the way things have always worked, and they've worked in that environment. So making sure that there's some outside input as well, I think is very important, because we work the way we work inside. So that is definitely on the radar to look outside of our staff and see where we can get input from the community or other.
Yeah, I would say we've discussed it, but I think your point that you just made there is bears some further thinking. So we'll definitely incorporate that thinking. I know we've had lots of discussions internally on our staff committee about how we try to have good, positive discussions. For that reason, I have been voted off the island by that group, and so they are trying to, they're in a self-determining mode right now to have a more to have easier conversations with less power imbalance in the conversation. So, we will be talking to the committee members, and we'll ask them to think about how we get community input.
There's actually an expectation from
Yeah.
the province, based on our conversations today, that they'll be looking for that community consultation, whether via a committee member or through consultation or engagement in the development of the plan.
Yep.
And just more of a comment, every one of those community reps were extremely important and valuable resources, and I'm sure would be very open to someone reaching out to them to ask for advice and guidance or ideas, solutions. Astrid in particular stands out to me. She is the newcomer and English as a second language settlement teacher for the school board. And so we have a lot of programs that involve minors, youth, who may not be able to advocate for themselves. They may not have the words to go to one of our staff members and tell them what they're experiencing. But Astrid works with those children and their families. She doesn't just work with the kids, their families as well, daily, and would have a lot of really important insight for programming that might involve youth, where we might not so easily find that from, we're not going to bring a 7-year-old in to sit at a boardroom table.
But I think it's important to note, our community navigator, Samir, is actually doing an education session with some youth from, I think, 4 or 5 different municipalities. And we don't account for that activity and that input either. And somehow we have to make sure that, he's on the committee, so he's having those experiences and bringing that information back to the committee as well. So there is some community engagement. Perhaps it's not as structured and as formal and as organized as it could be. But we also have to find a way to account for that input, which is also valuable. So just to reassure people that there is some of that happening, again, perhaps not to the extent that we could formalize it.
Other questions or comments? If not, I'm looking for some direction from council. Please, Councillor Newell, thank you.
Yeah, no. What I will take away from this is I think this is a great example of where council level of government identified something that wasn't working well. Great intentions. We're changing. We're adapting. Hopefully, moving to something that will work well. Certainly with Chester and Modal already announcing their decision to withdraw. It's already kind of fractured what would ideally be a regional committee. So with that, I move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater provide notice that Council does not intend to renew the intermunicipal agreement, request the other 4 partner units mutually agree to dissolve the ERIDAC effective immediately, and if a majority of participating council do not support the dissolution of ERIDAC, then council approve the town's withdrawal for the Lunenburg County ERIDAC effective May 1st, 2026, and direct staff to advance the town's anti-racism and diversity initiatives through a locally managed approach consistent with provincial requirements and council priorities.
Thank you. Seconded by Deputy Mayor McDonald. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Our next item is grants to organizations. And while Kara's coming up, just because the Deputy CAO mentioned Samir, I had a great conversation with Samir today. So last month he gave 5 physician recruitment tours of the town, and 2 of them are coming, that's amazing. So Samir continues to do these tours. He sells the community well. Some of that is through his lived experience, and some of that is just through the gift he has of giving these folks the tours. But to have another month where 40% of the physicians have decided after that tour, there's other parts to it too, right? We have a physician recruitment team with Patty that does an exceptional job. But when someone drives around the town with Samir and talks about all the things, not just there's a building here and a park there, and the LCLC is a huge. Without that, there are no more doctors in this town. Without that multi-use facility, but it's also about the people and sharing the stories. So I just thought this was a good segue to tell you that's 2 more physicians coming to this community, and more tours on the way. So I want to thank Samir for his work as our community navigator, but also be prepared to welcome a couple new doctors soon. So. With that, no pressure, but there you go, Kara.
Okay, good evening. I'm here to talk about grants to organizations. So, as you know, the committee is made up of 2 councillors, Councillor Conklin and Councillor Wynot, and 1 staff liaison. The role of the Grants to Organizations Committee is to review each grant application and make recommendations to Council on awarding the grants based on the Grants to Organizations policy. The policy provides for 2 categories, operational and project grants, and there's 1 intake period on March 1st of each year. As a part of the 2026-27 approved budget, we had $45,000 allocated to the Grants to Organizations policy program, and Council also allocated a one-time addition of $30,000 in response to the Bridgewater and Area Interchurch Food Bank Association request, which was deferred to Council deliberations and the Grants to Organization program to administer. So a total of $75,000 overall. The Grants to Organization Committee makes every attempt to be fair and unbiased while adhering to the guidelines set out in the policy, as there are many organizations looking for assistance. So the committee received 21 applications with a total ask of $124,370. There were 7 applications for project grants and 14 applications for operational grants. Upon review, the committee recommended awarding 4 project applications and 9 operational applications. One of the operational grants is a multi-year grant, and this multi-year funding is still contingent on yearly reporting from the organization to ensure the funds are being used as originally stated. So the committee is recommending awarding the grants as follows. Project grants, $3,000 to Blue Nose Coastal Action Foundation, $3,000 to Lunenburg Pride, $3,000 to the Bridgewater Curling Club, $750 to South Shore Multicultural Association Cultural Day event, to a total project funding of $9,750. For operational grants, we have $30,000 to the Bridgewater and Area Interchurch Food Bank Association, $5,000 to Flourish 55 Plus Healthy Active Living Society, $5,000 to South Shore Minor Hockey, $5,000 to Lunenburg County Wheels, $3,500 to the Bridgewater Barracuda Swim Team, $4,000 to the South Shore Multicultural Association, which is the first of a 3-year multi-year agreement, $5,000 to the YMCA of Southwest Nova Scotia King Street Centre, which is the 3rd year of their 3-year agreement, $5,000 to the South Shore Sexual Health Center, which is the 3rd year of their 3-year agreement, and $2,500 to the Bridgewater Curling Club, which is the 3rd year of their 3-year agreement. So the total operating grants would be $65,000. Any questions?
Questions from council? Is someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor, why not?
Just took a drink of water, just to prepare for this one.
Yeah.
I move that town council for the town of Bridgewater endorse the recommendation of the Grants to Organizations Committee and award grants for the 2026-2027 fiscal year as follows. For project grants, $3,000 Blue Nose Coastal Action Foundation, $3,000 for Lunenburg Pride, $3,000 Bridgewater Curling Club, and $750 for South Shore Multicultural Association Culture Day event, and that's a project grant funding total of $9,750. And operational grants, $30,000 to the Bridgewater and Area Interchurch Food Bank Association, $5,000 to the Flourish 55 Plus Healthy Activity Society, $5,000 South Shore Minor Hockey, $5,000 to Lunenburg County Wheels, $3,500 to the Bridgewater Barracuda Swim Team, $4,000 to the South Shore Multicultural Association, and this is agreement year 1 of 3, $5,000 to the YMCA of Southwest Nova, it's King Street Center, it's agreement year 3 of 3, $5,000 to South Shore Sexual Health Center, agreement year 3 of 3, $2,500 to the Bridgewater Curling Club, agreement year 3 of 3, and for operational grant funding total of $65,000, with grant funding approvals totaling $74,750, representing the majority of the $75,000 allocated in the town's 2026-2027 budget.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Conklin. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. And thanks to our Grants to Organization Committee for their work on that. 12.6, PACE program and fee change. We'll welcome Leon DeVried to council. I feel like it's been a while since you've graced us with your presence.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I may look like Nick Brown, but I am actually a different human.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, my goodness.
I'm sure everybody was aware.
You are wearing the Nick Brown uniform, though. Yeah.
We don't all look the same.
You're clean shaven at least.
You look sharp, though.
So, good evening. The report in front of you is around the Town of Bridgewater's PACE program, which has been going on now. I believe we are in year 9 overall, started in 2017, if I'm not mistaken, and we are entering the final few months of the funding arrangement that we have with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities for essentially ultra-low interest loans from a federal program that the Town of Bridgewater has access to around $5 million worth for lending out to its property owners for energy upgrades to their homes. The agreement, the draft amendment number 3 of the agreement that's in front of you is the third in a sequence of changes that we've already made over the last few years to the service agreement that we have with the organization that delivers our PACE financing program services for Bridgewater residents, which is the Clean Foundation. And it concerns their stated need to increase administrative fees for participants in the program, as well as to tidy up the end date for this year's program, as part of the program is in transition to a regional service delivery model with the District of Lunenburg, and that's for the Energize Bridgewater Home Upgrades program. So it's a convoluted little contract. There's actually several schedules attached to it. And the way it works is that each schedule is a separate program within the overall service agreement. Schedule A is sort of the main program, clean energy financing, that's available for any property owner in town. It's not income qualified. If your property fits the bill, you can acquire financing, assuming the upgrades make sense. Schedule B is a specialized program for income qualified residents. That's for the home upgrades program. That's the one that's in the process of being transitioned to a joint service arrangement with the District of Lunenburg. That one needs an administrative update to extend the date by a few months because it's actually out of date at this point. And then Schedule C is around a multi-unit program that council enabled for the use of the financing back in December of 2024, if I'm not mistaken. So the reason for Clean Foundation's program fee increase is provided in a letter that they have attached. Essentially, just to boil it down a little bit, the FCM funding arrangement through which we are receiving loan funding has actually been insufficient from a grant perspective to help subsidize Clean Foundation's cost of services to our residents. So they essentially underfunded themselves through the grant portion. The money has run low. The other problem is that when the grant portion is tied to the loan portion, and so because we haven't spent all the loans, guess what? Not all the grant money has come through for Clean to maintain its staff. So as a result of this, they've been in a position where they've either had to close program services or raise program rates for the remaining months in the program. And the rate that they've proposed is to go up to $1,000 per client. That is still a heavily subsidized figure. I do want to make sure council's aware of that. If this were a fully private service, it would be substantially more than that. And the other part is that this fee increase is being made to all their partner municipalities that are in the same arrangement as us. It's not just Bridgewater, it's all their PACE program municipalities are in the same position of seeing a request for increased fees. And then the other relevant point is that the administrative fee is actually counterbalanced by an up to $2,000 grant per participating property that offsets that administrative fee. So that will continue in the remaining months. The large majority of Bridgewater homeowners who participate in the program do not, receive the full $2,000 and therefore are still in the black, if you will, from a program participation perspective. The only other thing that I'll say is that the other part of the motion that's in front of you is regarding the waiver of fees. So Bridgewater does receive a certain amount of grant funding from the FCM arrangement. We have elected to keep most of that in a pot as a loan loss reserve fund. So in case there's a default on one of the loans, there's money there to cover that. A small amount is used to offset a number of fees associated with the program, and the recommendation from staff and Clean is to continue using that resource to basically not have an admin fee for our income qualified residents who are generally, of quite low income who participate in the program. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about what's on the table.
Great, thanks, Leon. Questions from members of council? Deputy Mayor?
So, forgive me, the calculation for the project to qualify requires that the cost of the renovation will result in a savings of equal to or more than the cost of the renovation. Is that still?
If I could
elaborate on that. It's actually the cost of the loan.
Okay.
So if the loan costs a homeowner, I'm just going to make up a number, $1,000 a year, they must save that or more in energy savings.
Okay.
And that's a consumer protection mechanism that the town has maintained in its program since we started. Yeah.
So understanding that there is rebates that hopefully kind of offset that administration fee. If there are not, the administration fee becomes part of the cost of the loan. Do you
Yes.
think that it would have any significant impact in people's ability to meet that threshold? $1,000 isn't a lot considering the cost of everything today, but.
Yeah, so the fee is going, just for clarity, the fee is going up from $400 to $1,000. That's the proposal. The average amount that the town loans out is over $20,000.
Okay.
So we are talking about, $600
Right.
as an increase on
Yeah.
20,000 plus. So from the perspective of a monthly fee, that's not actually a large
You're not gonna have
component
impact.
of the monthly
Okay.
loan repayment costs.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that was going to have any significant impact on that calculation and people being able to get there.
I mean, everything pushes on
Yeah.
everything at the end of the day, and what we've striven to do with the program, both on our end and with Clean, is to ensure that monthly rates are as low as possible for participants. At the end of the day, that's one of the reasons that the fee waiver is in place for low-income residents. It's probably that, but it's also probably that we don't want to tell people we're charging them an administrative fee. So it's a little bit of both, but certainly, that $400 does make a difference. So yes, I can't say that it doesn't,
Right.
but it's relatively small in the big
Some
scheme.
people, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Newell.
Yeah, I guess to me, what I'm a little hung up on is I'm just trying to understand what part costs, because the $1,000 is still a subsidized rate, correct? Like I do believe it's still being subsidized.
Yes.
Like 1,400.
It's actually higher than that.
Oh, good.
If you compare it to, because even the 1,400 at the end of the day is only able to be offered by the organization because they run at nonprofit rates.
So I guess my question is, a home energy assessment still only costs $200, and that to me I would just assume would be the most expensive portion of the total delivery. So I'm just trying to understand, what does the other 1,200 plus now of administrative? So to me that just
Yeah.
seems like a lot of administrative overhead.
Yeah, so that's a very fair question. The home energy audit is actually a deeply subsidized service as well. The market value of a single home energy audit is somewhere in the $600, $700, $800 range. There are two of those that need to happen to participate in the program because we do a before and an after. So that's all included. There are subsidies that come from Efficiency Nova Scotia toward those. In addition to that, we just know the amount of time that Clean Foundation spends really working people through their home upgrade plans. Yes, for some people, it could be pretty cut and dry. They get 3 quotes for solar panels. But for the next household in the program, it's, all kinds of conversations about windows and quotes from 3 sets of 3 quotes for 3 different upgrades is 9 quotes. They talk to people about the quotes. Things change halfway through the process. There's quite a bit of work that goes into these files. I've certainly seen a lot of customer attention over the years in order to get people through the program. At the end of the day, though, we don't have insight into Clean Foundation's books and how they run their business. This is their letter indicates sort of like a good faith promise that they can run the service at that rate and that's an efficient rate. Yeah.
Other questions, Leon? If not, I am looking for some direction. Councillor Frazier.
Yes, I'll make a motion, Your Worship.
Thank you.
I move that that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater direct staff to enact changes to the services agreement between the Town of Bridgewater and Clean Foundation by executing the proposed third amending agreement for Clean Energy Financing Program, thereby extending program terms until September 30th, 2026, and increasing the PACE Services administration fee as described in the amendment, subject to any resulting changes being in substantive accordance with the draft presented herein. And 2, continue waiving the increased PACE services administrative fee for income qualified energized Bridgewater home upgrades participants residing in Bridgewater and recovering the waived fees from the grant component of the FCM Community Efficiency Financing Fund stream.
Thank you. Seconded by Deputy Mayor McDonald. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you.
May I just quickly say,
Yep.
say one more thing?
Of course.
Because this is these are the final months of the FCM arrangement for the low-interest loans, staff intends to bring to council more information about that within the next month or so.
Okay.
And we may invite Clean Foundation to come and present on their work as well.
That's a great idea. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Down to 12.7, Heritage Advisory Committee revision terms of reference. So this is some housekeeping items here.
Thank you. Yeah, so on behalf of the Heritage Advisory Committee, staff recommend approval of the revised Heritage Advisory Committee terms of reference. Housekeeping amendments to remove reference to the Bridgewater Museum Commission. That's as a result, as council knows, of the commission's dissolution in October 2025.
Any questions on that? Someone prepared to make that motion? Councillor Newell, thank you.
I move that Town Council of the Town of Bridgewater approve the housekeeping amendments of to the terms of reference of the Heritage Advisory Committee to remove any and all references to the Bridgewater Museum Commission due to the Museum Commission's dissolution in October 2025.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Wynot. Discussion. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. And then we have a recommendation of an appointment to the committee.
Okay, so on behalf of the Heritage Advisory Committee, again, staff recommend that Peter Oikel be appointed as a new citizen member to serve on the Heritage Advisory Committee in accordance with Section 4A3 of the committee terms of reference, effective immediately for a 3-year term. Peter Oikel is an active and engaged member of the community. He served on various committees of council over the years, Heritage Advisory Committee for many years, Planning Review Advisory Committee, Downtown Plan Advisory Committee, perhaps among others. Peter is keenly interested and knowledgeable regarding built heritage and the history of Bridgewater. And, speaking for that committee, if I may, will be a welcome addition to that group. So, yes, staff recommend the appointment.
Yeah, that's great. Yes, Peter is, I was going to make some joke about, I didn't know Peter was interested in heritage of the town, but we all know Peter is well-versed and the go-to source for knowledge on this subject in the town. So if someone's prepared to make that motion, Councillor Newell, thank you.
I move the Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater appoint Peter Oikel as the new citizen representative to serve on the Heritage Advisory Committee for a 3-year term in accordance with Section 4A 3 of the committee terms of reference, effective immediately to April 27, 2029.
Thank you. Seconded by Deputy Mayor McDonald. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. And then we are down to 12.9, land acquisition for public street purposes, Maple Street.
So this acquisition will help facilitate some intersection improvements that will be done as part of the work on the Dufferin Street wastewater upgrades. And so council has considered this matter in camera, and a motion is requested from council or approval that would enable myself as the CAO to enter into an agreement of purchase and sale for the lands required for the Maple Street, Dufferin Street intersection improvements, and that would be a portion of PID 60032471 as discussed in camera. Once the agreement of purchase and sale is agreed to and signed by the owner of the lands, then the details of that can be made public, but until then we reference it as discussed in camera.
Perfect. Thank you. Someone prepared to make that motion, Deputy Mayor?
Move the Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater authorize the CAO to proceed with an agreement of purchase and sale for the lands required for the Maple Dufferin Street intersection improvements, being a portion of PID 60032471, and as discussed in camera.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Newell. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. We've reached the end of our agenda. We do have an in-camera meeting under Section 22, Section 22(2)E of the Municipal Government Act. Also, safe travels to those heading to the NSFM in Yarmouth in a couple of days, where all 49 municipalities will have representatives meeting to discuss municipal topics of interest. So, thank you. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Please, Councillor Newell, seconded by Councillor Frazier. We are adjourned.